Did you get a chance to watch our last session?
I did. And it is always more profound when I listen to it than when I'm originally doing it. So, of course, I listen to it.
Good. Yeah, could you hear the narcissism?
You bet.
I know, it's amazing when you hear it. It's like, holy crap. That's just, but you don't, when you're in it, you don't see it.
Yep.
You know, and, you know, they say people who suffer with narcissism, and I don't want to label you narcissist because that's not who you are. That's just a symptom of survival. But people often think, I've been told and we are taught that someone who is narcissistic will never recover. It's like you can't recover. It's a personality disorder. And I just don't think that's true. But then again, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, right? To me, it's just survival.
I know what you're talking about, and I'm a grateful receiver. So.
Good. So, I was thinking about our last session and where we might need to go and why you might and I could be wrong, but I think what might be a struggle for you is the fact that what I'm suggesting is so completely and totally foreign to an entire lifetime of experience for you. Right? How old are you? You're 7, you're
I'm 75, I'll be 76 in February.
So you're 76, and what I'm suggesting you do is change your entire identity. Right?
Right. And little by little, I do let go. I mean, last night I went, lady, you cannot have a scale that you get on every day. Get rid of the scale. And I did.
That's awesome. How'd that feel?
I want to go out there and get it, but I put it in an inconvenient place.
Oh, that's good, because you're realizing that that's part of the problem. That
Absolutely.
the need to monitor your weight is still coming from that position of weight is important, right?
Right.
And so if your weight is important, how does that impact your relationship with food?
Right. Yeah. Makes me scared of food.
It distorts it, right? It distorts it into something that's threatening. Which is
anyway, I had my son from Minneapolis is a great help, and he works for Oracle, and he always has a reason to fix my goddamn computer. And he comes in from Minneapolis, and a friend next door who was helping him, and I was, of course, maddened by the fact that I couldn't make my computer work, which it has all my business on it. And I was hungry. It was like, that's how I'm going to take care of it. And I recognized it, and I ignored it, and I took the scale out. So I'm getting you, girl. I'm getting you.
I love it. Yeah, it's empowering. It should feel empowering. Like, I'm done. Like, I have to quit all of it. So that's what we talked about last time. At least I gave you what I had to do, which was get rid of everything. I used to measure my waist 10 times a day with a measuring tape, you know, like a sewing measuring tape, you know.
Oh, God.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, you understand it. You understand why I would do. Because it's insane. You're surviving through the size of your waist.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. That's what the scale was. I'd get on it, you know, whenever I went to the bathroom, because that's where it was. And I was like, get it out of here. So I did. Yeah, it's like a measurement of safety or threat. And, you know, and no matter, and what it says will tell you what you need to do. As if it's some, like, it's some, you know, future teller or something. And you become a slave to it. You become a slave to whatever it says, and it can change your entire attitude for the day, right? Well, I had my girlfriend's daughter anorexic, told her mother to tell me that I would gain weight, like I wouldn't know that.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to hear where people are coming from. And
Yeah.
Carol, who is my dearest friend, is thrilled and is now acknowledging that her daughter is probably anorexic. And
Yeah.
I hope they do something, and if they don't, they don't. And
well, they got, as you know, if she is that daughter, she has to be in a place where she's miserable enough to let it go. So
I totally understand that.
right?
She's not, and maybe never will be. She's
Yep.
very insulated. She's married to a doctor, and they have, amazing amounts of money, and she has a following of people who listen to her for a variety of reasons.
Well, and
it's okay.
Well,
I wasn't at all upset by hearing I was going to gain weight or that people are talking about it. I paid great attention to what you said the other day. It's like the more public it is, the more likely it won't matter.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? It's like coming out of the closet. Like,
yeah.
I'm coming out of the closet as a fat person, and
I know,
and I don't believe it's worthy of shame, even if other people shame me, because what you have to be able to see. You have to give yourselves distance from it enough to see that what you were doing, that you were not, telling people is worthy of shame.
Not only was I not, I made sure they didn't know.
Yeah, full on denial.
And I have 50 years of doing that, so you can imagine how acutely good I got it.
Right? Well, that is the truth, that you do get really good, and you get good at being in denial about it and negotiating for it, and which is why I think that our last session was so pivotal, because I was actually putting you in a position to tell yourself the truth. Tell yourself the truth.
Yeah.
And because if you don't, nothing's going to work. You're going to, you'll keep on doing what you're doing. So I'm at least hopefully giving you and empowering you to do it for yourself, right? Because if it requires that I do it, this will never work. That would mean I'd have to be with you all day long going,
Yep. And I don't think you do.
Well, I don't want to, but you have to do it for yourself. I know I had to for me. It was like I have to be willing to, even if I could get away with it, I'm not going to do it because I don't want to anymore.
Right.
That ego self, that survival self clings to it, right? But I don't want to, I'm not going to give that oxygen anymore. If anything's going to die in this, it's that. I'm going to let it die. And when you do, you're left with a feeling of vulnerability because you don't know what else you're going to do. Like, that's what you've done. You become an expert at it. It's like, and you're left without it. It feels like somewhat juvenile in terms of your state of awareness around who you are. It's like, I don't know who I am. I don't know, what do I think? It's like, I'm a kid. I'm a child. I'm a toddler in an adult's body. And you have to look at even...
I took that seriously too. One day you told me that you fed your body as though she were your child, and I do that.
That helps.
Do that.
It helps because it takes out the manipulation of the...
Yeah.
Because if you feed a child basic, fundamental food, right? Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and I'm going to have eggs and bacon.
I came home from therapy and made... Because I was hungry, and I knew you would call me in a few minutes. So I put fruit and cottage cheese together and made crackers and peanut butter and feel just fine.
Yep, and you taste it and you eat it, and as you're eating it, the anorexic persona that you took was going to say, you're ugly, you're fat, you're a loser, you're going to gain a bunch of weight. So you might hear that in the background, and you have to just say, I accept it all along the way. You accept it all. That's really important. That Yeah. So the ego survival brain that you had, the ego identity that you had says you're a loser, you are going to be fat, you're a piece of shit. It says all these things to manipulate you to clench back into the dysfunction around dieting and bulimia that you had. And again, as it arises, you are to accept it. So all threats that come to the mind, you are to accept. You're going to be fat. I accept that. No one's going to like you. I accept that. You'll be alone the rest of your life. I accept that I will be alone. And so you're essentially making those threats irrelevant.
Yeah.
Powerless. Yeah. They have no power because you are not responding to them. You're actually going towards the threat. And it's amazing that as you do that, it just doesn't happen anymore. It's almost like that the narcissism in there loses power, and it just says, well, if that didn't work, I won't do that again. Yeah. Once you've accepted the weight gain fully, completely, wholeheartedly, without bias, it just is like brand new. That is essentially what I'm saying when I said to you, you are going through like a whole new identity. You're getting rid of your identity. Is to go through the death of who you think you are, right? Yeah. The death of Gail, as you knew her, needs to die. Right? So you're left with, well, then what is there? So my point was that as I've been thinking about our session today in preparation was to go through dying, the death process. And I think you have some experience here, but it never fully surrendered, right? You came back to make sure that nurse knew. Which I love that.
Came back to what?
To make sure that nurse who was abusive, I remember. I think that's just funny. Yeah. I'm bringing that up because it was just like, oh, you're a fighter. So, so I think it's important to go through the death process. This is what I had to do. And I did it not because someone guided me to do it. I did it because I'd actually already decided to commit suicide. That's how I went through it. I'd made the decision and was quietly surrendering my life before doing it. There is a process when someone realizes they're going to die that they go through before they fully completely surrender. There is like this moment you look at your whole entire history. I don't know if you did that. Did you get a chance to do that?
Yeah, look at how foolishly I've spent my life.
Well, you look at, yes, yes, I'm not going to judge it.
I just missed so much.
Well, you needed to do this. Clearly, this was important for whatever reason. For whatever reason, this was essential for your current state of being. Right? So don't judge yourself. You did, in whole honesty, the best you thought. You did what you thought was the right thing to do, to the best of your ability, to the best of your awareness. So you're only aware of so much, and you kicked ass for that. Right? So you can see that in it you were innocent. But in looking back, so let me go back to the death process. You look back at your life, and you do it in a different way, right? You do it in a introspective way around what did I do? What was this life about? Versus the bias of saying, I won. It's not about that when you're dying. At least you hope not, right? You go back and you're looking at just everything. You're just like witnessing it. You go back and witness the whole thing. It's an incredible experience. I remember for me, it didn't take much. I wasn't old. When I went through this, I was 20. Nonetheless, it was incredibly important to where I'm at right now, right? because I ended up feeling very sorry for the life that I had lived up to that point. It was pathetic. Not in a judgy way, but it was very sad, the ending.
Yeah.
It was very, very sad how this was ending for...
I realized that I am alone because I don't want anyone to witness the vomiting. So that's very much part of my aloneness.
Yeah, and you know what's amazing? I bet you anything that your aloneness is what you wanted to be thin to get rid of. More than likely. You were afraid to be alone, which is why you clung and clutched to your thinness. Because you thought that thinness would bring you people, acceptance, lovability. And in the end, it brought you what you truly didn't want.
Yeah, but it is, I am not making it complicated, Robin. I remember you saying that this is easy to decide. And I think that's what I did. And it might get terrible along the way, but for right now, I'm just fine. I'm open to whatever. I want her gone, and I like her replacement, and whatever it takes.
Right. Well, so let me go through this process with you, because I think you're close, and I want to make sure that we fully go through what it means to die. So, you reconcile, right, your past. And that's important. When you look back and you say, what a waste, you see that now in hindsight. Now that you have reaped, your rewards, right? You see that in hindsight. But when you're in it, you really don't know or are aware of what's going on. It took a near-death experience for you.
Right.
To wake up and go, whoa.
Right.
And so is it fair then to really judge yourself?
No. I don't hurt her anymore, ever. That was my promise. I will never hurt you, ever.
The body.
Ever. No matter what, I will prevent you from pain. Even if I stub my toe, I acknowledge that's a pain that I can do without.
Yeah. So you forgive yourself.
I do.
Yeah. And that's very important, because once you forgive yourself, you're essentially reconciling the way you used to be as not the way you want to be moving forward. So it's really, it's like a gate you pass through into a new space, because once you have reconciled and you have forgiven yourself, you are now given the grace of freedom, which is
absolutely that I feel.
Right, which means it is infinite for you. So, in other words, let me use myself as the example. When I went through this process, I remember as I was preparing to shoot myself in the head. That was the way I was going to go. I remember thinking, okay, so I taking it as seriously as it is. I remember thinking, well then, okay, this is such a tragedy how this is ending. Once I die, what will happen? What if I get another chance? Which was my hope. That was in the back of my mind. I was like, God, if there is a God, I hope there's another chance. And I thought, okay, so if I get another chance, what would I do different? And the first place I started was with, I remember my initial impulse was to say, well, I want to make sure that the next body's thin. And I paused and backed up and went, oh hell no. No. Because that will end in the same suffering throughout the entire next life. It didn't last long, this one. I don't want that. I don't want a life where I'm fixated on the body in any way. So whatever the body is that I enter into a contract with for the life of it, I will accept unconditionally. I will accept whatever state it is in, However long it is going to live, I'm not going to worry about that. Whatever it is, I accept it. What that does, what it did for me is it allowed me to go into then what life is then. Because if life is not the body, it means that it is a space of awareness that I get to experience. And why waste it on fixating on the body? That's like you take infinite space and diminish it into a tiny little speck of thinking. Right? If I have to fixate on my body, that means I'm not fixating on a bunch of other things that I would rather, right? So you go into the next body with this like unconditional, I accept it. I accept any disfigure, any issues, any trauma that might occur. I accept it. I accept that I might die early of a terrible accident or disease. Whatever it is, I accept it. Which is very different than the way I lived with this body, which was I cannot accept it unless it fits a specific condition so that other people will like me, right? So that was the next thing I became aware of was, well, the only reason why I fixated on the body is because I wanted other people's approval. I wanted to feel approvable. Just even to myself, I wanted to feel approvable. So I clenched onto a system that said, well, if you're thin, you're approvable. So I clenched onto thinness. I also had clenched onto religion and different other things, but I had to surrender those because I realized I will never again rely on someone else's approval to validate my approvability. I will validate it myself. That I am the only person, I'm the only being that is aware of me. Even my mother is not aware of me. Because she isn't me, she's her, right? I am the only one that knows how I'm feeling, what my needs are, when those needs are there, to what degree, to what depth, right? To what intensity. I'm the only one experiencing that need. So how am I to rely on anybody else on this planet to fulfill those if they're not experiencing the need themselves? So I will always rely on myself to fulfill those needs. I cannot rely on anybody else. A boyfriend, a girlfriend, a job, a child can't fulfill those. My parents can't fulfill those things. And as long as I am aware of what those needs are, I am responsible for those needs. So I am no longer dependent. The same way. I think we're inherently dependent, obviously on food to survive. We can't just survive on our own. A baby cannot live on its own. But where I'm headed is in the codependency. I'm not going to be codependent to where I am weaker as someone else builds the strength of taking care of me. Right? So once I went through that thought process, I remember thinking, well, then who the hell am I? Then what is this? And I realized that my entire concept of Robin was fake, because everything about me was created and internalized to please someone else. Like the way I did my hair, the way I dressed, the music I chose to listen to was because someone else liked it and I wanted them to like me, so I just started listening to it, down to who I had sex with. I want them to like me, not because I want to have sex, but because they want to have sex and I want them to like me. So you become a slave to everybody else's wantings and likings, and you lose touch with yourself. So that's where I started over, was like, all right, that's like being a baby. Like, what's the difference between me being 20 or you being 75 and figuring this out, and a toddler and figuring this out? Only difference is you don't have the opinion of your parents, right? We have the fortune of being old enough to be completely independent and responsible for our own thoughts and perceptions at this point. We don't have the influence of family, and really, and we're old enough to know that the system we're in, we don't want that either so much.
Oh, right.
Right? Like, do I want to be the religion my parents raised me? I had to ask myself that. My answer was no. Hell no.
Right.
Nothing against them. It's not an anti-statement. I'm not against that religion. It's not for me. Right? See how that changes things? It's not the
Yeah.
If I were to just be
religion. I am pleased that I had an opportunity to live in a Jewish milieu because I like being a go-getter, and there was just no room for being lazy. And I, honest to God, did not know that there were people who were poor. I just didn't know. I didn't know.
Growing up?
I didn't know people were lazy and that they didn't go out and work. I just didn't know. And I'm glad about that. And I'm glad my children are ambitious. And without being crazy, neither of them are. They're both considerably less crazy than I ever was. And they're lovely. And they've grown up to be colossal men. And I have very little to do with them. Colossal men. Each in their own way. Just astonishingly amazing men. So Marshall is a fantasy man. And he has known all of this for years. Years and years and years. And has tried to impart it, but I wasn't in any way able to receive it. But he's known himself and whatever forever. I think Darren too, but Darren is less. Darren is a lot more superficial in order to fit in with his crazy Jewish in-laws. But he's a little resentful of it all because he really doesn't like the anyway, whatever. He's more although not really. I'm going to say he's more pretentious, but he's not. He acts that way to accommodate, but in himself he knows that is silliness, that's just foolishness, that's just unnecessary, and God willing, my children will be as I am, which is just themselves. They don't have to be movie stars, and he's a lovely man, and he really has a big burden. He has children from the first marriage. She absolutely insists they hate him. It's taken a lot of doing for him to just go, well, they'll come around or not. I hope that I can have an impact, but if I can't, I can't. It's just amazing. It's like he didn't force himself. He doesn't force it.
No, or he's not manipulating them.
Right, as I would,
Yeah, it's amazing when you think about it, how we as children evolve beyond our own parents. We all learn from, as you have, like what you liked and what you didn't like, and you evolve around it. You know?
My children both had bar mitzvahs because my father-in-law at the time was the mohel in Winnipeg. I thought it was kind of important. And as soon as they had their bar mitzvahs, they kind of took the presents and gave back the circumcision and went, see ya. So they have neither of them. He married into a Jewish family. My younger son.
Yeah.
And he went to synagogue this year. He's like just amazed by being a part this Jewish thing.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we're all fine. They've been free to be for so long, and now I am, but they have been 3 years.
Yeah, but you can see it now, right? You see it now. You didn't see it before.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the willingness for them to just be authentic, even though people judge them.
That's the right word. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, even though they can be judged, they don't care.
And watching me be inauthentic, which pissed them off so much.
Well, maybe you were the inspiration for their authenticity.
I think that might be a fact.
So it worked. The narcissism reverse worked.
I'm never going to be like that. Yeah.
Well, it's a beautiful thing to witness and to know this before you die. Right? Especially if you have more time.
Yeah.
Right? Because you now have time. So this is something that I remember thinking too, and I wanted to mention this in this session, is when I came out of that experience and witness, I remember thinking, relative to the way I lived before and the beliefs I had before, I'd already failed. I had failed my entire first 20 years of life. Total and complete failure. To the point where suicide was a great option, right? I remember thinking, so if I'm going to start over, if I'm hoping to start over, why do I have to kill the body to start over, right? I am not the body. That was another thing I became aware of, right? Was that, okay, so when we talk about
I don't know how to shut that off.
Yeah, don't worry. That's okay, I don't care. It's like I had to kill the identity of Robin, right? So before you die, there is a letting go of who you are, the name, the body, the identity, everything that goes along with it. And I remember, and I don't need to go into details, but I remember in that moment realizing that there was nothing, the part of me that was still existed was so innocent and so childishly loving, and that felt real, and it still connected with me. And I remember thinking, well, if this is who I am, if we want to call it that, then this feeling will be in my next life. So what is the point of the body then? Right? So if the truth of who I am has nothing to do with the body it's attached to, then why is killing the body gonna do anything? Right? And that's when I realized there was no point to suicide, because it wasn't a physical problem that I was experiencing. So a physical ending or a physical solution was like pointless. It was completely off target into what needed to commit suicide. What needed to commit suicide was the old identity. The old identity of Robin. And how I had constructed it through religious ideology, body image dogma, brainwashing from culture, the idea that you're inferior unless you're superior, the whole thing. And so once I decided there's no point to suicide, if let's just use the word reincarnate or become born again or get another chance, why can't I just do it in this life with this body? Why do I have to kill this one when it's done nothing wrong? I'm the one that's messing it up. I'm the one that's obsessing over it. I'm the one that's telling it can't be fat, And the other thing I realized...
Are you fat?
No, never been. Not that that's relevant. It's irrelevant. It's the same feeling for someone who is fat. They just feel ashamed about themselves and hide, right? I was in the narcissism of the success of thinness and would rather die than be fat, which is what you were doing. Right?
Oh, for sure.
Which is just disgusting when you think about it. Yeah, and I realized I'd rather be alive and fat. than to do what I was doing.
A lie. Oh, Robin, everything has been a lie. Everything, as you suggest, every single thing has been fabricated.
Yeah. And we make it real. We make it real. It's bizarre.
Every single thing. And it gives me an understanding of why my children were so resentful. I was like, wonder why my kids are so resentful, because they did not like the inauthenticity.
Well, here's the thing. You loved yourself, the survival self, more than you loved anything.
Right.
And they could tell.
That's so true.
So what it comes across to the child is that you don't really love the child.
Yeah.
Now, as a mother,
I hate to admit that, but that is a fact.
I know, but the truth of the matter is, at your core, that let's just say that one of your children died, it would kill you. It would kill you.
Yeah.
It would be irreparably it would affect you way beyond, but you know that now. Before, you didn't know that.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, under the lie, the truth was they were of enormous importance, and I loved them. And
with every soul of your being.
Right? Yeah.
With every cell of the body.
Being always there, because I was so there for myself.
Yeah, well, you cannot understand love for others until you understand what it means to have love for yourself. And it is not self-righteous love that you know well. That is not it. We're talking about the love you have and respect you have for your own life. Like the existence of life. When you have an awareness of what that is, and you give it grace, and you are kind and loving and respectful to the, man, I don't know what the word is, but the divinity of it, right? There's no voice, there's no words to describe what it feels like. It's like all of a sudden when you fall in love with that within yourself, holy shit, you see it in everything else. Right? So you're now getting this like, oh my God, my children were not truly loved. I loved myself more. But it wasn't real love. It was like the self-righteous, it's the self-righteous survival that we think is love, right? It's really just I was surviving, which is very self-oriented. And so I threw my kids under the bus and saved myself.
So absolutely horribly true.
Yeah, so
I sit here and I get why they are suspicious of me. Less and less so over the past years. For whatever reason, I have grown softer in spite of the continued bulimia. But not. I mean, it just wasn't what it was when I was 20. I didn't do it when I was 20, so I don't know what it was like. But I now have a really good understanding of why they are. I wondered why they were so suspicious of me. I'm really smart.
Because everything was so self-serving.
Exactly.
Yeah, everything.
But I now understand why Marshall in particular is like, I'll consider that. I'll try to take away all the layers of lies that I suspect are there. Unbelievable. Until this minute, I couldn't have said that.
Yeah, feels good. Doesn't it feel good, Gail?
Yeah.
Just to be like, it should feel like a bazillion bricks that you just came out of a grave. Like, holy shit, because there's no...
Hilarious, because they are afraid to accept my money, because it might be dirty.
Yeah, well, you could see it probably was dirty.
It was. Oh, God, I was so good at whatever it took. Yeah, they're right.
Well, and their fear comes from experience. It's not like they haven't experienced the it's always got attachments to it. It's never really coming from love.
An amazing awareness. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm telling you, this whole process of dying, this conversation is really pivotal for you.
What is?
This conversation about dying.
Oh, yeah.
No, it is.
Oh, yeah.
Because it just, all of this fallacy that you've been living with is, it has no value anymore.
No.
Because it is wrong. It hurts yourself and everybody around you, and you wouldn't do it again. You would never do it again. Because you see clearly that it did not serve anybody. The illusion before was that would serve you, and you were doing something great, when in reality you were doing something malicious, not seeing it. Right? And so now that you can see it, you're 75 years old, you're looking back going, this did nothing but cause damage. I thought it was the right thing to do, because I was thinking...
I'm going to tell you, it does not feel worse that I'm 75 years old and that I spent all this many years. It doesn't feel worse that it's been 50 years. It's just stupid. I mean, I don't say to myself, I wish I now was 40 years old.
No, of course not.
I really don't wish to be 40 years old.
Well, don't you agree?
I'm glad to be an old lady that looks good, that feels good, that is aware, that has passion, and still am vital. And I'm really glad I'm not dead. And I had a chance. I have a million times in my life wanted to be dead and thought I would never be lucky enough to be dead. I laughed about that. But I imagine being this old. I've fallen 1,000 times. I've had a million car accidents, and I'm still here. It's like I'm never going to be vanquished from them. I will suffer forever.
That is hilarious.
And true.
Well, it took...
I am Iron Woman. I am indestructible.
Well, is it you or is it karma?
Yeah, it could be. All I know is that...
Because I'm pretty sure it's not you.
Is, I wish... That's how it was. Thank God I have a moment for it to be different.
You do. And that was, again, this brings me back to the whole point of this conversation, as I'm kind of guiding you through it. The whole point of this conversation was to be aware. Like I said to you, I remember thinking my whole entire life has been a failure. So why not start it over? The body's still alive. That means even if I could just say, because, I was raised as you're going to hell Christian. If I'm going to hell, I might as well take advantage of this life to figure it out. Because if I do get another chance, I want to make as much progress in this lifetime before I go into the next life.
All of that isn't a belief of mine, so...
It doesn't need to be.
Whatever. I probably will be reincarnated.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be, because it's just all imaginary, right? I was imagining this, and it was doing so much good for me to imagine it. It did enough good that I'm bringing it to you, and it is doing you good.
Right.
So who cares if it's true or not?
For sure you are doing me good.
Right? So who gives a shit if you believe it or not? Because it's not even you that doesn't believe it. It's some brainwashing that doesn't believe it that you just bought into. Right? Yeah. So you have to be open to reality.
Brainwashed and whatever.
How am I brainwashed?
By believing there's another life.
I don't even know. I'm not saying I do.
Certainly.
So if you say you don't...
I am most likely going to have another life.
Well, then why don't you just take the rest of this, since you fucked up this one, and do it right?
I know.
That's my point.
I really feel as though I don't look back and resent the 50 years. I am grateful for the next 40 years, because I can imagine that I'll still be here 40 years from now. So.
Yeah, well, the amazing thing is as soon as you get to this awareness, your body's going to say, all right, we're done now. You know, because the body, you know, is so...
People want to leave, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, it's kind of like the people that are trying to get pregnant, and as soon as they stop trying, they get pregnant. It's like all of a sudden you get to this awareness and clarity, and your body's probably going to say, all right, see you later. It's time for the next one. Who knows? But whatever time it has left, right? Because you don't have anything to do with that.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
Don't claim it. Don't do that.
No.
So if whatever time it has left, the goal is that you learn to live differently. Like reincarnation. Like you just reincarnated. You didn't need a new body.
Right.
You just reincarnated.
Yeah.
If we want to believe that.
Yeah, and I get to keep the knowledge of having.
You got it.
Of what has happened.
You got your wisdom, and you keep that. Yeah. You keep the wisdom. The key is that you update your hard drive. Right? Think of it like we're updating your hard drive. It's like I'm the same computer. I'm just getting a whole new hard drive. I don't want the old one. It had bugs. It was full of viruses, and I installed all of the bugs and viruses. I'm done.
Don't talk to me about computers.
Right. I want a brand new hard drive. And so we update. So you keep the wisdom as if you are now. It is now usable wisdom, right? It is now usable.
Right.
And so you begin to use it. So how you relate, for example, to the body. We will start with that. Imagine you just were born. You're going to get a new body. How would you want to relate to the next one? Do you want to tell it what it needs to be for you to be comfortable in it?
Yeah, no.
Nope. So you remove that from your tasks, you know?
Right.
So whatever this body is in its aging process, on many levels, sexually, gender-wise, you are to accept what it is, as if it's not your problem.
A long way to go sexually, but that's another story.
Well, you know, I'm just saying, whatever it is, it's accepted. You just accept it.
Right.
Because it's none of your business. This is the body's.
Right.
Right. What that does is it frees you up, your soul and your spirit up, to now move forward, move into existence rather than moving into survival, right? You go into existence.
Yes.
And you start with how you relate to the body. That's where you begin. You update that relationship to where it is, the goal is clearly to be unconditionally loving to it, right? That I'm not going to sit here and tell it has to be good looking. Right? I'm not going to sit here and tell the body it has to look a certain way. I will accept its genetic inheritance. Period. Once you do that, and you relate to the body in a loving contract, see it as a contract. This is a loving contract. We are partners.
Yeah.
My job is to listen to it. If I'm hungry, I eat, and I eat adequately. I'm not going to ever starve the body again or overconsume. It's both directions. I don't want to hurt it one way or the other. I will feed it as if I am feeding another child, someone else's body.
I believe that, and that is a lesson that you've given me for life. So
yeah. Well, and once
before I spoke to you, I realized it would be an hour before I ate. And I went, I'm eating now. Even if I have to be chewing in her ear.
Yeah, if you're hungry, I don't care.
I was hungry.
Yeah. Good job. So you honor the body. It's now it's the one thing you used to manipulate, damage, abuse. And it's like the one thing at this point that you are giving it honor before you honor yourself. Right? Yeah. So the next relationships you go are the next closest important relationships. So the first relationship you have to honor is the body, because it is the one giving you this consciousness. It is the one providing you awareness. It is the one keeping you here, right? So you honor that first. So the next step is to how you relate to the next most important people. So if you were to die, you back out of life, what are the relationships that you would reconcile at the end?
Yeah, and I'm getting to do that now. Yeah.
Yes. And so what you do is you recontextualize those relationships. You make amends. You change your way of being. You forgive them for thinking that you're the old self. You understand that. Makes sense, because they have no reason to think otherwise. But you make amends, and you it's like you honor the truth moving forward at all times. That you relate to these people without conditions as well. It's like how I related when I was going through this with my parents. When I went through the process of eliminating people in my life, again, preparing to commit suicide, I went and had to reconcile in my mind relationships. And it landed for me at the end with my mother, of all people. Right. She's now passed away.
Understand?
Say that again?
Probably not.
Say that one more time.
Did your mother understand?
Not at all, because she was super religious. She remember when I said to you, you didn't love your kids, you loved them through whatever system, like thinness. You loved them through money. You loved them through those things you attached life to. I realized that my mother loved me through religion. She loved me. It just came through religion. So she was super religious and indoctrinated me and shamed me for not being like she only loved me if I was in her religion. She was so unaware that's what she was doing.
Of course she was.
Yeah. And I in my reconciliation with that relationship became aware of that. I became very aware that my mom was clueless. And I remember witnessing in that how much she would grieve if I killed myself. The truth would be that it would kill her. It would kill her soul if I had committed suicide. And I remember becoming aware that she would rather me be alive as a horror, than to die a lie of who she wanted me to be. She'd rather me be alive as anything that I truly am than dead as who she wanted me to be.
I understand.
Right? She had no idea. In fact, she didn't know about what I went through until she was diagnosed with brain cancer 5 years ago, and I told her because she was going to die. And I needed to talk to her about how I recovered, and I had this out-of-body experience, right? So that's how I became this aware. I didn't get this from reading books. It truly came to me in the process of death to commit suicide, right? And so being that you just experienced near death, I figured we kind of need to maybe finalize that process for you moving forward. So when the time comes again, right? When death is coming again, when death calls, it will be very peaceful in a different way for you, where you feel very good about going. That's the goal.
Yeah, I'm not afraid to die at all.
Yeah, but this time you want to feel good about going.
Yeah.
That's the goal, right?
Yeah,
I am feeling good. I am ready to go, and I'm pumped. This was a slam dunk. I did it. That's the goal. Not what the fuck did I do?
Yeah.
Right?
How amazing.
Yeah, so in a way, I'm actually aiding your death right now.
You as a result of it. It's just all amazing.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, I was just saying, it's almost like I'm the angel to help you die. I'm here to help you die.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do it in a way that is to your potential, dearie. You could say your last 75 years was stuck in like second grade.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, but you needed it. I see that within myself too. I needed to be in hell. I really needed to suffer that much to surrender this. To get to this space, right? How fortunate do I feel, right? How fortunate do I feel that I experienced that at a young age, to where the life I have, which could end at any time, right? But I have the benefit of time to practice what I learned in that out-of-body near-death experience. I am practicing now what I learned. So fortunate. Right? Because you can spend an entire lifetime stuck in the dark doing nothing.
Yeah, you know? and most people do.
I know. That's what's amazing too, Gail, is when you come out of this, you're going to realize, because you become you gain this discernment around people who are stuck in the dark. And you don't judge them. There's no judgment, because you're aware they're doing the best they can with what they know, and they're just not knowing much. And if this is what they need to do, they probably need to suffer to change. Right. And it's none of my business.
But I wouldn't bring it on them.
No way, of course, right? That's like saying I wish someone to hell. Oh, that's some shitty karma right there. Because we've been in it. That's what I think. I think back and I go, that was the depths and pits of hell I was living in. Total darkness. Just terrible, terrible hell. Miserable misery. Blah.
Right.
And I'm grateful to have experienced that, even though I wouldn't wish it on anybody. So, but you learn, right, in forgiving yourself, that it is a choice. And so the one thing to learn at this point with the time you have left is to surrender your ego as it arises. As you start to get off on yourself, you surrender it as it arises. You don't wait until you suffer to surrender it. Right? And the question you also have to ask yourself is, if you are surrendering this superior identity of self, which is really about survival of me, what threat, if you're surrendering that, should there ever be any threats? No. Right? Because you should be surrendering to it as they occur, which means the threat doesn't exist, because you surrender it as it arises.
I hear you.
Yeah, because we're animals. We're animals. We have the animal brain. We cannot negate, if I cannot lie that if I go out in my car and some asshole cuts me off and almost causes an accident, that I'm going to say, fuck you, and throw him the finger, right? I have that there, but to me, it's not serious, right? You take the seriousness out of the animal aspect of your brain. What I'm talking about in terms of surrendering is that you could manipulate someone, and you're not going to.
Yeah.
Why would?
And when I think about the rage that I had at the way I was treated while I was so very, very sick, enough so that I found the energy to take care of myself. Once I found the energy to support Gail, whoever she was at the time, I was back. I was alive. I was not going to die. I was awake already, so I may as well make something of my life. And I think that woman and that reaction saved my life. It was...
the nurse?
Yes. And several days later, I spoke to the doctor, and I'm sure he had been home a million times between when I arrived and that time. But he actually was drop-mouth shocked at the fact that I could speak. I was that sick. He looked at me and went, "You speak? That's amazing. You make sentences. I've not heard you do that before." So I was non-existent.
Wow.
Of all the things that I am probably most proud of is my ability to speak. I don't know if pride is the right word, but I'm grateful that I'm able to put things into words so that I can be understood.
Or inspired. And you're inspired by the energy of that.
I was shocked to hear him say that. I was like, "What do you mean I haven't spoken? I don't make sense."
That is a test of your will. You have a very strong will.
And the whole thing, all of it, has brought me to this. And if the kids hadn't come in, Marshall and Amanda, they are very good together. They are both just brilliant people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love Amanda. Amanda's one of my favorite people.
And he was not going to listen to any of my bullshit. I mean, he's listened to it for 50 years. And it was like, I'm in charge here. And, boy, they were hard on me. And when she came up with you, Marshall was like right on it. It's like, and that I expect you to do. So all things, they didn't come in until I had been in the hospital for nearly 2 weeks. And why it took so long, I don't know, but I wasn't present until they got there, so it's a good thing they didn't come earlier. All amazing stuff. Really amazing stuff, Robin. And
you realize that none of this would be this way if you were still stuck in your pride. And
absolutely not one thing.
I know, because you wouldn't notice it. You'd be like,
no.
I'm pissed I'm still here. Yeah.
Well,
so you must have suffered enough. That's what I always say. I'm like, this woman has suffered. You suffered enough. To where you are like, I have nothing but to admit that I suck. That this was
absolutely true.
100% my failure. Yeah, I failed. I have to admit it. I failed. And once you admit it, it's so freeing. Because there's no reason for you to defend it anymore. It's like, why defend that piece of shit life?
Right.
Why would you even want to even admit that, why even think that it was great? It sucked. That was hell. You lived in hell for a long time.
Yeah.
With the illusion that it was great,
Yeah. And the still willing to, the day you said it was a good thing for my friend to say, look at how much you've eaten, because it's really important that you let go of the lie, and I didn't want to talk about it ever again.
You were clenching onto it still, and you didn't even know it.
Yeah,
no, that wasn't good, because that, that's reality, and you were sensing, I'm in reality, I can't hold this fake identity anymore and expect to move forward. So you needed a reality check to surrender it.
I wouldn't have had it without you. I would not.
You wouldn't have seen it.
Your forcefulness and your grinding was what I honestly needed. I didn't like hearing it.
I know. It's the truth. It's not easy, because it's like someone's taking away your, kind of like your armor. It's like I'm ripping away your weapons and armor, and you're like, I'm buck-ass naked. I'm like, yep, we're just gonna, and it really takes, Gail, it takes someone who has done this before within themselves to know and to discern and to call the bullshit. if I hadn't bullshitted myself, I wouldn't have recognized your bullshit. If I hadn't willfully exposed my own bullshit, is what I meant to say.
Well, I don't think my kids have been bullshitty to themselves, but boy, they...
Yeah, when it comes to this stuff, plus I'm not your relative, I'm not a child, so it means more to you. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Because you're not positioning yourself above them in the maternal, position. So if it was coming from a child of yours, it would not have had the same impact.
Oh, right.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we have... thank you for everything.
You're welcome.
So far.
Good. Well, hopefully you keep on practicing and going through that process of dying again. Like, do it again. I do it often. Not in a weird, but in a way to kind of keep me aware of bullshit that we carry. It's like, oh my God, why am I getting upset about this? I wouldn't, so it keeps you clear. It just keeps there's clarity in your mind when you go through, I call it a reconciliation process. It's like going through the stages of dying and the grief of dying and to clear things out. So you can go, this isn't important. That's not important. These are important. And then it's like rebooting your hard drive and it's updating it. That's kind of what that is. So practice it. Go through the process of dying again.
It feels as though we're done, but I have one more thing that needs to die and reincarnate or whatever it is we do, and that's my sexuality. So if you would, I would like one more time with you just to talk about
sure.
sex.
Not a problem. No problem. I have time.
So when do we want to do that?
To reschedule. Okay. Yes. Let me get my calendar. And I'll put that in my notes with the next session. I can talk on Monday or Tuesday. What's good for you next week?
Monday and Wednesday and Friday I go to therapy.
Okay, Tuesday's good.
And I'm learning to walk upright. Anyway, so it's just hard on Monday, Wednesday, or Friday.
No problem. So why don't we look at Tuesday?